Hey, what's up? I'm Rafael de Furia, aka Rafi D is me, and I am back at it again on another beautiful Friday night. And this week we're going to be talking about something that we've talked about a little bit before, but something that we'll talk about a little bit again, about actually being here in Italy, being a foreigner, being here, making a life for yourself in this country. And what I want to talk about today are some of the things that I wish I had done differently or that I could have done differently. There are some things that just based on circumstances, that's just the way it had to happen, but thinking back on it now, there are a few things that I know that I could have done better. But before we get too much deeper into the video, if you would like to see more content about moving to Italy, Italian citizenship, and more, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on, and if you could also give this video a like, I would really appreciate it. And if you're looking for a gift for Christmas or something for yourself, a stocking stuffer, whatever it may be, Pizza, Pasta Amore shirts, as well as many others, are available on the NYAG store. You can go to rafaeldefuria.com/NYAG gear. Link down in the more info section below. And yes, it is something that actually does help me to make more videos like this. So if you want to support the channel and get something to go along with that, there you go. And just a quick little side note, this is the 52nd week of my NYAG project. I believe this is my 56th video that I've uploaded in this first year since I started to upload these videos. I started actually working on the framework and the idea of this project. I started, I think, in 2014-15, but I didn't actually launch until a year ago today. It has been such an amazing experience to get to know some of you and to interact with you and to hear your stories. I mean, it's been such a rewarding experience, and even to get to make these videos has been so much fun. I really look forward to the next 52 weeks, and what's going to be coming, I have no clue. I'm just playing it by ear at this point. I would love to be able to do more travel videos, but that kind of does require a budget. And thankfully, because of supporters on Patreon, this month I may actually be able to do a little mini travel video. I'm not going to be able to go so far away, but I think I might be able to go to one of the cities not so far from where I live to be able to show a little something. But let's get into this list. The absolute number one thing that I recommend to everybody, which I didn't even do well enough myself, is that I really wish I had learned Italian better before coming here. Yes, I had 14 years to learn, well, actually more than that, because I could have been learning since I was a kid, but that I'll blame on my parents. But especially in the few years leading up to finally getting to the end of the process, it was one of those things where I was just at that point where I just couldn't. I was so stressed out with going through all of the paperwork and all the documents and getting everything ready that I just like, you know what? Once I get to Italy, I'll just force myself to do it. In hindsight, that was the wrong way to do it. I didn't even end up taking real lessons until a few weeks before I arrived here. And I actually didn't even know that it was going to be just before I got my citizenship that it all just ended up working out just perfectly. So who knows, man? Maybe there was some energy out there that just said, man, just as soon as you learn some Italian, you will be ready to bring it into yourself. That citizenship, that passport will be ready for you. You'll be energetically open. And all that sort of millennial hippy dippy stuff. I mean, hey, you never know. I mean, I did have a little bit of Italian under my belt because I'd been coming here since I was a kid, and some Spanish, some Portuguese. So transitioning a little bit into Italian has made that easier. I would still say my Italian is not perfect, but that's actually going to lead me into a point that I'll start talking about later in the video about actually where I live in Italy. The next thing that I actually would have done differently is actually studying in Italy. I would have gone to university if I could in Italy. Having an Italian degree will make a big difference, and you can actually go to some places. There are programs, for example, in Milan and Florence, where you can study almost doing the full program in English, or not so far from where I live, down in Bolzano, they have the Open University there, or Free University, where you actually have to know English, German, and Italian to be able to study there. And that's actually something when people contact me, if they're thinking about going to university and if they're wanting to maybe delay arriving in Italy until after they've finished university in America, what I actually say is, if you want to actually live in Italy and make a life for yourself here, it's worth considering studying here, because if you want to get your equivalencies and getting everything done ready to go here, your American degree may not be as well respected here in Italy as an Italian degree would be. And even though this wasn't necessarily possible, I mean, I could have maybe applied here in Italy, but one thing that I really wish I had done, and this actually goes with the last point about studying in Italy is I really wish I had come and started my life here sooner. Transitioning into life in Italy is not the easiest thing to do, and I think the younger you are, in some ways the easier it is, but even I think there's kind of a Goldilocks zone of just being young enough or just being old enough. Like if we had come here like my family originally had planned when I would have been a kid, like early teens is when we were originally thinking that we would come to Italy, I think that actually would have helped me immensely. I actually would have gone through the Italian school system, so I'd have decent language skills and documents from this country actually saying what I finished and what I did, what I didn't do, all that stuff. And the Goldilocks zone that I'm kind of talking about, to me it seems like the Goldilocks zone kind of seems to change between men and women, boys and girls. And this is a subject which is talked about in the expat community. There have even been studies done about this, about what age is best. Like if you're moving with children, at certain ages, girls do better than boys do better than girls, but I think overall girls in general do better than boys do with the transition into life abroad. But the younger you can do it, the better, because it just becomes so much more normal for them. But either way, high school is probably one of the most difficult times to make that transition. So I'd say, my opinion, before high school or before university. But that's maybe a better subject for a different day. Also, one of the other things that I would have done differently is, even though I love where I live, it is gorgeous, it is beautiful, the air is so clean and fresh. And these were some of the biggest things that I was looking for, and including I wanted to kind of be out in the middle of nowhere, especially because just before moving to Italy, I had a really stressful work life. And so I wanted to get as far away from that as possible. I moved to kind of the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's not like I live in like a podunk little kind of backwater village, but to get anywhere in the country is very inconvenient. Like when I went to Sicily recently, to get there was actually super inconvenient because I actually had to take a train from Merano to Bolzano, and then I had to switch to another train in Bolzano, then get to Verona from Bolzano. And then once I got to Verona, then I had to take a bus to the airport, and that actually was pretty easy and pretty quick. Then the plane from Verona to Palermo. And before I even got on the plane, I was already hours in transit. So I would maybe prefer to be in an area that's a little bit more centrally located, but still kind of a little bit out. And there's starting to be a few places that I'm thinking might be a little bit more interesting for me. Because also, when we're talking about where you're living, I'm in a position where I'm starting my life out all over again from scratch, and I need to build a foundation for myself, which I'm still trying to do. And so work is part of that. And for the type of work that I used to do, video, before I came to Italy, and something that I hope to rebuild in my life, where I live may not be the best place for that, for the type of clientele that I like to work with. So if I were living in a place that might be a little bit more centrally located, where I would have access to be in a few different cities within about an hour or so, I think that would actually make a big difference in what I may be able to build for myself work-wise. But getting back to what I was talking before about that I wish I had learned Italian better. Because where I live is actually a trilingual area. This town I live in is bilingual, German and Italian. Well, it's actually a dialect of German, which if you learn German and then you come here, you're not helping yourself by learning German. It's very different than the dialect that they actually speak here. So that's actually put a little bit of a damper on being able to learn Italian. The easiest way for me to learn a language, it takes a little bit longer, but it's for the way that my brain works, it's just easier for me if I force myself to try and speak on the street and get completely immersed in the language that way. But here, more often than not, I'm speaking German rather than Italian. I do use Italian quite a bit because there are certain subjects that are much easier for me in Italian rather than German. But even then, being in a bilingual area, it inhibits the progression that I would say I'm able to have in Italian, at least as far as like on a scale of time. Like again, talking about the example of my recent trip to Sicily, I felt as though in that 1 week of being there that my Italian progressed so much more in the space of that just little week right there than it would here in the space of a few months or more than a few months. So that is something that's a little bit frustrating for me. I mean, we don't even have an Italian bakery here. I mean, this is one of life's most important things, especially if you move to Italy, you gotta have an Italian bakery, and we don't even have one. But on a serious note though, it can get a little frustrating at times not having that Italian influence that maybe I was looking for. There is some Italianness here in the area, especially more a little bit in Bolzano, depending on where you are, but I think that even just from that cultural perspective, I would prefer being in an area that might have a bit more of an Italian influence than a Germanic influence. But the thing is, being in this area, having come from the US, it's kind of an interesting mix because there are certain things which makes the transition into living in Italy a little bit easier because of the way that the German culture has influenced things here. Things work a little bit more similarly to how they might in America. For example, things like get done here. For example, how the area is run. It's run very efficiently. Things run on time. The streets and everything here is very well taken care of. So for that kind of quality of life, I guess, in a way. So for an American, actually, this area might be one of the best places, I think, in the country to have the transition, but you're not going to get as much of an Italian experience as you would maybe in another part of the country. And so that's one thing that I think that I would like to have a little bit more of in my life. But then even talking about like where you work and where you're living, you could be in a place like Milan, for example. And I used to know someone who was a teacher, an English teacher in Milan. But even though they were working all in one city, because the classes that they had to teach were all over the place, that meant that in between classes to go from one company to another to be teaching these private English classes, these private English courses, they would have about an hour and a half to 2 hours of transit in between each class. So that meant the amount of classes that they were able to do was quite limited during the day. And even that, I mean, that's a lot of traveling to have to do, especially if you're doing 3-4 classes plus per day. And that's even if you're lucky. That's actually one thing, like where I live, for example, if I have to go to Bolzano, if I need to do any sort of work thing there, it takes me about like, say, 50 minutes, an hour to get to where I need to go to, because I'm talking about the walking time from my house to the train station to train station, and then walking to the destination. But one thing that I am glad about where I moved is there are some people who really need to have that expat community around them. I really didn't want that. I've lived in places where there are large expat communities, and it can make it very difficult to really integrate into local society, which is more what I was interested in. I wanted to move to Italy to be in Italy. I didn't want to move to Italy to be in a British expat bubble or an American expat bubble. I just wanted to be here. But if it is your first time moving abroad, it can be really nice to be able to make connections with other expats. I mean, even before I moved here, I made some connections with people that really, really helped me. I mean, I doubt you guys are watching, but Lindsay and Nikki, if you guys are watching, thank you so much for all the help that you've given me. Especially you, Lindsay. You are awesome. Oh, and Tanya too. Thank you. Don't get me wrong. I do like to have connections with other expats, but not like living in a bubble of expats. But even then, like I was saying, it can be nice if it is your first time abroad to kind of have that expat community around you. People who know the lay of the land a bit better than you do and can maybe help guide you through things. Or just even to have social interaction. It can be nice to speak your own language. Trust me. So in a place like Milan, for example, they have this giant women's group with women from all over the world. And they get together every month, and then they have smaller meetings at other various locations in the city. And they're all there, and it's a very nice community that they have. And this is not something that only exists in Milan. You have this sort of thing in other different places, and there are Facebook groups and all those sorts of things. But one reason why I like to kind of steer clear of some of these groups is because I'm not going to get into it in this video so much, but there can be some toxicity in the expat community, people complaining about the country, complaining about the locals, complaining about that life isn't as good as in the old country. And this is something that I didn't want to deal with, that I didn't want to get involved with, because I've seen it too many times in too many places, and especially the expat community online sadly can be a bit toxic at times. Very often I have the thought, like, really, if you hate it here so much, then what the hell are you doing here? And not specifically here as in Italy here, but like wherever it may be that they are. And I am generalizing here, but this is again one of the reasons why it can be great to have this around you, but I prefer to kind of be a little removed from it, but still have other expat friends, because there are some people that are really great, and I've made some really great expat friends over the years. And going back also into the kind of right age and what is the best time in your life to move here. A lot of people tell me, oh, it's so great, you're in your 20s, you're single, you don't have kids, you can kind of just be wherever and do whatever. You don't own any property, you don't have any major investments, you don't have to look after, and that you're not attached to anything. And okay, yeah, in some ways that can make it easier to live abroad in a new country, but at the same time, yeah, I don't have those investments, I don't have property, I don't have this kind of income coming in to be able to help me to be able to have a more solid transition and life here. So that's one advantage that I think people who come later in life do have, is that it's more likely that they might have these things. Of course, this is not going to be everybody, and I know people who don't have this going for them. But it's probably something that I would say is much less common, especially for millennials in their 20s at this point in time, that they own these sorts of things and have these sorts of things going for themselves, maybe rather than somebody who's had a few more years to get ahead. But for sure that I don't have kids, that I'm single, these sorts of things have made this easier, that I can kind of take more risks that I'm willing to take on, like some of the risks that I've taken myself. I mean, just financially, just to be able to be here, I wouldn't want to put that on somebody else, especially not a child, because I know what I'm getting into. But for example, a girlfriend, partner, whatever, might not be as willing to jump into the deep end as I might be. Well, as I have been. And that kind of brings me into my next point, is that I wish I actually could have maybe saved a bit more before coming here to help with my transition here, because again, the financial side of things here is, or wherever you go, is really important. It decides, do you have an apartment? Do you have something to eat? These things are very important in life in general, regardless of where on earth you might be. And yes, I really do wish that I could have given myself a little bit more of a safety net, a little bit more of a cushion to land on. But at the same time, for me to have been able to build up that cushion would have taken me years, and that would mean years that I wouldn't be here. So I, at that point, weighed out what would be more worthwhile to me. And yes, okay, it would make it a much more difficult transition, but I decided to come sooner rather than later so that I could actually be building my life here and not wasting time and just get down to the nitty-gritty. And that kind of leads me to a question. Is there really a perfect time here? And I don't think there is. I mean, maybe there are perfect circumstances, like you've already made your millions and you're coming here just to enjoy la bella vita, the pizza, the pasta, and the amore. But like I've said in other videos, even though the transition has not been easy for me, and I'm still trying to make this work, I'm loving it. I'm so glad that I've gone on this adventure, and I'm not saying that it's for everybody, but I am happier than I've been in a long time here. I think it was even in my last video talking about the kind of expat life here, like before moving here, like at 23 years old, I started getting white hair, and coming to be here, I've relaxed a lot more, and some of that white hair has gone back to brown a little bit. So even though things aren't perfect, in some ways, things are perfect actually in other ways. I'm finally living the life that I had dreamed about for so long. It may not be in the way that I was hoping it would be, but I'm here. That's just it. That's exactly what I wanted. And if you have any input, or if you've done this yourself, what are the things that you wish you had done differently? Or what are the things, if you haven't done this, that you are concerned about, that you want to make sure that you think about before you do? Or maybe is there anything that I've spoken about in this video that you haven't quite thought about yet? Always feel free to leave a response down in the comment section below. This is always an open conversation. And also, if you would like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian citizenship, and more, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like, I would really appreciate it, as it does help out the channel. And if you do want to help out the channel a little bit more and support what I'm doing here, you can go over to rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon and become a monthly patron. Or if you'd like to help out just one time, you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/support. Or if you get one of the pizza, pasta, and amore shirts, it also does help out what I'm doing here. All of the links will be down in the more info section below. And as always, I'm Rafael Di Furia, aka Rafi D is me. Thank you for joining me on another beautiful Friday night. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see y'all next Friday. Later.